Carol, and Bob. Robert and I, Carol Koslowski, have been married for 10 years as of this June. We had a happy life. We met in our third year of college. We started dating a month after we met. At first, it was just casual dates. By the summer holidays of our third year, we were having sex regularly. We had not yet made a promise of eternal love to each other, but we were both looking forward to seeing each other after the summer holidays. That summer at home, although it was nice to be home, was a lonely time for me. In my heart, I promised to be faithful to Bob. Whether he was faithful to me or not did not bother me, since we had not yet promised each other to be exclusive. I went on a few dates over the summer, but never followed through with them. All I could do was satisfy them, and even that made me feel guilty. I was so ashamed that I didn't go out with anyone more than twice. Bob and I talked a lot on the phone. He didn't actually live that far from me. I lived in Chicago, and he lived in Indianapolis. It was only a 6-hour drive, but we both didn't have our own cars or money to get a hotel room and enjoy each other. Returning to college made me very happy. Bob and I could be together again. On the first day back, we met in the square. We kissed deeply. We stood kissing for a long time. For the rest of the year, we were exclusive. We agreed to be only with each other. I was so happy. Shortly after graduation, Bob asked me to marry him. He moved to Chicago to find work. His major was in marketing, mine was in English. I got a job teaching English at a local high school. We now live together in his small apartment next to my work. We got married this summer. My father paid for everything. Yes, my parents were wealthy. They even paid for our honeymoon. When we returned, they moved us out of that small apartment into a house that belonged to my father, closer to the school where I worked. He also bought us a new car. Bob took the train downtown every morning, so I got a car. My father told me that he would give the house to us when we celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary. I just returned home from shopping. It was mid-morning on a Saturday, and I found it strange that Bob wasn't home. I shrugged, thinking maybe he needed to buy something for a project he was working on in the basement. I put the groceries away, then went into the living room to rest before starting to prepare dinner. As soon as I sat down, the phone rang. Shocked, I picked up the phone that was lying next to me on the nightstand. "Hello," I said. "Mrs. Koslowski." I say, "Who is this, please?" "My name is Alex Jeffries. I'm your parents' friend." "Oh my God, did something happen to my father and mother?" I almost screamed. "No, Mrs. Koslowski, I assure you, nothing happened to your mom and dad. But I'm afraid I have bad news for you." "Yes," I said, my heart still thundering in my ears. "Your father asked me to look after your husband." "My husband?" "Yes. Apparently, the last time you spoke to your father, you mentioned that he seemed to have changed." "He was." "Well, never mind. You know what your father was told. Anyway, I'm watching him, and I'm afraid right now he is in room 113 of the Sleep Time Motel at Route 4 and Vulcan Road." "And what?" "He's there with Mrs. Victoria Harold. I'm very sorry to tell you this." I gasped and almost dropped the phone. Vicki was my best friend in the world, or rather, it used to be, if what Alex said was true. "How long have they been there?" I asked. "About 10 minutes. If you hurry, we can push them down before they finish if you want to do that." "Certainly." "I'll be there in 5 minutes," I said and hung up. I took the car keys from the table, got into the car, and drove in a hazy state to the Sleepy Time Motel. There was a man standing in front of room 113. I parked a couple of rooms down, got out, and calmly walked towards who I suspected was Mr. Jeffries. He raised his finger to his lips to silence me. I nodded as he turned and knocked on the door. "Cleaning," he said loudly in a feminine voice. Cursing could be heard from inside the room. When Alex heard the lock click, he pushed the door open to whoever was on the other side. "What the hell?" someone on the floor said when the door suddenly opened. Stepping aside, Alex let me go first. What I saw tore my guts out. My husband was lying naked on the floor. Vicki lay naked on the bed, her eyes wide with horror. Bob tried his best to slide back along the carpet, his eyes filled with fear. A sudden flash from the camera distracted me. Looking around, I saw Alex with a phone in his hands. He was taking pictures of Bob and Vicki one after another. "What the hell?" I screamed, turning to Bob and Vicki. "Video, Alex. I caught you," Alex answered. "You damn idiot. Get up and sit on the bed with your frivolous woman," I shouted to my future ex-husband. Bob had almost fluttered off the floor and was now sitting on the bed. I stood looking at the pathetic image of the man I married. I walked up to the bed, looked at Bob and hit him, and then my future ex-girlfriend. "Let me explain," Bob groaned. "So can you explain this? Can you explain that you're cheating on me with a frivolous woman on the bed who used to be my best friend? Okay, go ahead." "Dig your grave deeper," I screamed, looking at him. Carol, it was. "Just shut up, Bob. You'll only make the situation worse," Vicki said, hitting Bob on the head. "From now on, you no longer live with me. Call me tomorrow to pick up your clothes. You better leave this dirty room. And you, bitch, don't ever talk to me again. Alex, let's go." "Wait a minute, who is Alex?" Bob asked, frowning at me. "This doesn't concern you anymore," I shouted over my shoulder. Alex walked away after me, still filming the video of the two lovers. He closed the door behind him and turned to me, turning off the video. "What now, madam?" he asked. "You will save this video. I need to go to the bank before the bastard does this. Do you want me to go with you?" he asked. "No, stay here. Watch him when he leaves. Call me on this number. This is my mobile. You can also send me this video so we can have 2 copies. I'll do it. This? Yes." I turned and walked to the car. The drive to the bank took only a few minutes. I was sitting in front of Alan Billings' desk. He was a good friend. He was transferring money when my phone rang. It was Alex. "Hello, Alex." "He's already on his way to the bank." "It's okay, I'm done here. I think you should come inside to accompany me, if you don't mind." "With pleasure, I owe it to your father," Alex said. "We'll have to talk another time about why and what he owes my father." Alan handed me a new debit card, a new credit card, and a new checkbook. We shook hands just as Bob walked in and walked toward me. "Alan, whatever she did, undo it," Bob demanded. "That's impossible, Bob. Have a nice day, Carol." "Thank you, Alan," I replied, turning to leave. Bob grabbed my shoulder, forcing me to turn towards him. "Don't touch me," I screamed. Alex stood between Bob and me. Alex took me out of the bank. Looking back at Bob, I saw that the guard was holding him back. I shook my head and Alex followed me home. When we got there, he was left in his car on the sidewalk. I went down to where he was parking. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'll wait here to see if Bob shows up." "Nonsense. If you are going to stay, go up to the house. I'll make some coffee." "Thank you, Miss Koslowski," Alex said, getting out of the car. "Carol, Alex," I said, going up into the house. Alex followed me into the kitchen where I made coffee. While I was pouring 2 glasses of coffee, there was a loud knock on the front door. Alex stood up, motioning for me to remain seated, went to the door, and looked through the peephole. He shook his head as he opened the door. Bob burst into the house, falling to the floor. Seeing Alex standing over him, the anger on Bob's face intensified. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing in my house?" asked Bob. "Get up, Bob, and get out," I said from the kitchen. "This is my home." "Didn't you hear?" said Alex. "Alex, on second thought, let him come in here so we can talk about what he did to me," I said. Alex walked away from Bob. I saw him do it and thought to myself, "Cop." I don't know why I thought that, but he was careful as he moved away from Bob. Bob walked slowly into the kitchen. Alex waited until Bob sat down at the table across from me before moving. Bob looked over his shoulder as Alex walked into the kitchen and sat to my left. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked. "Yes, please," Bob replied, rubbing his face with his hands. I stood up and poured him a cup, placing it in front of him from the table. I sat back down and took a sip of my coffee, looking at Bob. I was still angry and felt betrayed by him. "Why?" I asked. "And don't give me any, it was just sex bullshit. I didn't plan what happened. I don't care. I want to know why." Bob looked down at the table. I took a sip of coffee and waited patiently. It just happened. We were at the same conference and things got out of control. When we returned, we continued to see each other. I don't know why. It had nothing to do with you or us. We were married for a long time, and things were. He just stopped talking. What were they? Did they stagnate? Weren't exciting enough for you? I almost screamed. No, no. We're fine. I love you. I've loved you since we met. You are the kindest and most beautiful woman I know. You would do anything I asked without hesitation. Then why Vicki? And what conference were you both at? Remember a month ago, I had to go to Atlanta for 4 days? Asked Bob. Have you been cheating with Vicki for a month? How many times, motherfucker? I don't know, about 10 or 12 times. Was she better than me? Was she doing something I wasn't doing? No, no, nothing like that. It was just different and what? It was exciting. The possibility of being caught. I just rolled my eyes and shook my head. Well, you were caught. How exciting is this now? Not really, he replied. You know you ruined our marriage, don't you? I asked. I was hoping we could talk about this. No way, I screamed. I still love you. What will it take for you to take me back? I sat there looking at the disgusting husband I was married to. Did I want him back? I didn't know. Maybe after I go through anger and betrayal. Was I jealous of Vicki? Absolutely not. I always knew that I satisfy him better than she does. That's why I couldn't understand why Bob was dating her. She didn't look better than me. She may have had bigger breasts than me, but she had a nose that was too big for her face. So why did he find her attractive? Go get some clothes. I want you to leave home for a while. But there will be one condition for your return here. What is this? You better never sleep with me again, Vicki. Of course, no problem. She would like to talk to you, though, he said. Not in the near future, maybe never, I answered. Bob nodded and headed into the bedroom. Alex stood up too. Alex, sit back down, please, I asked. He sat watching Bob. You didn't answer my question, Bob said. Of course, she answered. Who Alex is none of your business right now. Maybe if we get together again, I'll tell you who he is, but now I won't, I answered. Bob nodded, looking sad, and headed to the bedroom to gather his clothes. I sat there, tears started to fall from my eyes. Alex cleared his throat. I just shook my head. Now, instead of anger, there was pain. The pain is so deep that I thought all my bones were broken. I was sick from the pain I was experiencing. It even hurts to cry. Bob then returned with 2 bags. I'm really sorry. No need. I don't care how sorry you are. Now go away and don't come back here until I call you. If you forgot something, buy what you need. Understood? Yeah, I got it, Bob said. His shoulders slumped, and he turned to leave. As the door slammed shut, my eyes began to shed tears again. Can I help you with something? Alex asked. I didn't really know what he meant, and I didn't care. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes in pain, and turned to him. No, Alex, there is nothing you can do to help. I really appreciate what you did at my father's request. Although I'm broken now, it's better that I found out what was going on. Thank you. My pleasure, Carol, he answered. Now there's one thing I'd like to know, I asked. What is this, madam? Why and what do you owe my father? Oh, this. He sat down, thoughtfully clearing his throat. If you don't want to tell me, that's fine. I'm sorry, Carol, but I really can't. Your father and I made a promise to each other a long time ago. And I. Forget it then, Alex. There's one more thing I'd like you to do if you have time, I said. Everything, Carol. Watch Bob. If he ever gets close to Vicki, call me, okay? As long as it doesn't interfere with your work. I work for your father. Understand? I'll be happy to keep an eye on him. Are you going to return it? I don't know. Maybe if he stays away from that frivolous woman. However, perhaps not, regardless. So this is unknown for now. It's clear. Then my phone rang. Looking at the screen, I saw that it was Vicki. I shook my head and let the call go to voicemail. Alex stood up and waited. I got up and walked him to the door. When he was about to leave, I stopped him and hugged him. He didn't return the hug. "Thank you," I said. "Please, Carol," he answered. I stood in the doorway while he got into his car and drove away. I heard my cell phone ring again. Closing the front door and locking it, I ran to get the phone. The call stopped as soon as I picked up the phone. Looking at the caller ID, I saw that it was my father. I called him back immediately. "Dad, sorry for not answering." "Are you okay, honey?" he asked. "Not really. Physically, I'm fine, but emotionally, I'm falling apart." "Well, you know I'm always here, honey. Is Alex here?" "No, he just left. I want to thank you for letting him help me." "You know I love you, honey, and I want you to be happy. From what you told me about Bob, I just knew he was cheating on you. I'm sorry you had to find out, but I'm sure everything will work out for the better. Any ideas what you're going to do with him?" "Not yet. We've been married for a long time." "I know, honey. It might be hard to forgive him." "Yes, it will. It's a shame your mom isn't here. She could help you get through this." I just looked at the phone. What my father said was completely incomprehensible. "What?" I whispered. "She'll be back on Friday. You two should sit down and talk." "Dad, did you cheat on Mom?" I almost screamed. I'm ashamed to admit it, but yes, I cheated. It was a long time ago, long before you were born. I haven't cheated since then. Your mom forgave me. I was so happy because I loved her very much. I still love her. More than when we got married. "Where is she?" I asked. I didn't even know she wasn't home. "She's in Hawaii." "Should I ask?" I asked. "If you want." "Why is she in Hawaii?" "She's there with her boyfriend, Frederick. She's breaking up with him so she can spend the rest of her life with me undisturbed." Oh my God. This was one of the conditions for her returning to me. "What?" I cried. "So she can have one boyfriend at any time during our marriage as long as I have a girlfriend." Oh my God, Dad. I was crying now. Tears were rolling down my face. "Don't cry, dear. I love your mother very much. Why she waited so long, I don't know. Maybe she can tell you when she returns." "Does she have her mobile phone with her?" I asked. I was now angry at my mother. "No." "Which hotel were they staying at?" "Don't know." "What the hell?" I screamed. I really cried. Tears streamed down my face. "I'll be there soon, honey. I should have said it in person." "Daddy, Daddy," I cried. "I'll be there soon, honey." He hung up. I dropped the phone on the table and fell into a chair. I put my head in my hands and just burst into tears. How could my father cheat on my mother? How could Mom cheat on Dad? I certainly didn't want to cheat on Bob. I loved Bob. I wanted to take revenge on him, but not in the arms of another man. "Crap!" I screamed. Suddenly, there was a knock at the front door. I wiped my tears on my sleeve and went to find out who was there. I looked through the peephole. It was that vile Vicki. I opened the door, and she stood in my way. She looked at me. I looked at her. She was angry. I didn't care. I slammed the door in her face, still laughing. She looked like a raccoon. She started knocking loudly on the door. I opened the door again. She almost fell towards me. My father caught her, coming up from behind. "Vicki, I think you should go," he said. "Mr. Lombard, let me explain." "No. Now go away," he said again, still holding Vicki's hand. She pushed away from his grip, turned, and walked away. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course, Dad," I said, stepping back. When he came in, I closed and locked the door. Then I found myself in his arms. He hugged me tightly, whispering in my ear that he loved me. I just burst into tears. He walked me slowly towards the sofa in the living room. Still standing, he held me tenderly as I cried. When I was just sobbing, he sat down next to me. Looking at him, I tried to smile, but I couldn't. He sat down next to me, hugged me, and kissed my hair. "Everything will be fine, dear, no matter what you decide to do." "I know, but right now I'm hurting, not just for myself, but for you and Mom." "Not like that, honey. Your mom and I are fine." But she's with some fool in Hawaii. She's doing everything out of spite. Yes, I know. However, this is the price I have to pay for cheating on her. Did you do this to Vicki? Yeah, she started hitting on me, so I hit her. I'm surprised she didn't call the police. That reminds me I should call Kevin. For what? Dad asked. To tell him about his wife. Why? So that he knows what a frivolous woman she is. Why? To get back at her, or to make someone else suffer like you did? I... Stop. Think about it for a minute. Maybe he knows. How can this work? I asked. Well, obviously she came home. How will she explain what's on her face? Oh, Vicki is very resourceful. She probably told him that we had a fight and I hit her. Have you ever hit her before? Dad asked. A few times on the shoulder. Does she often lie to her husband? Now that I think about it, yes, often. Call him then. My eyes opened in surprise. I took my mobile phone and opened my contacts. I scrolled to Kevin's number and pressed the call icon. Hey, Carol, why did you hit my wife? Why? Said Kevin. She didn't tell you, I asked. Something about a fight. She didn't want to go into detail. Details, right? Well, the fight was because she slept with my husband behind my back, I said calmly. There was silence on the other side. What? Kevin whispered. I caught them at the Sleepy Time motel having sex. Why this damn bitch? Kevin shouted. Do you have evidence? Eat. What? Video and photos. Send them to me, please. Of course. What are you going to do? Don't know. Don't do anything that could land you in jail, please. I'll try. Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. He hung up. I sent him the video and photos that Alex sent me. Then I sat back and exhaled. I didn't even know I was holding my breath. I suppose he didn't know? Dad asked. No, liar. I wonder how many other lovers she has. I think I need to go check myself. Bob wasn't using a condom when I caught him. Fool. I have a friend at the hospital on Roosevelt. I could call him. It can wait until Monday, Dad. I can go to my doctor then. Okay, honey. Whatever you want, you know you can do it. He asked. I know, Dad. Thanks again. By the way, what does Alex do at your place? He's my jack of all trades. He knows a lot about everything and everything about security. He's my director of security. Oh, apparently I captured it. It's okay, anything for my little girl, Dad replied. I'm not so little anymore. I can take care of myself, but it was nice to have someone looking out for me. Are you feeling better now, dear? Dad asked. Yeah, I'm fine. At least a little. I know I'll have to go through a lot more pain, but I'm fine for now. Thanks for coming. Please, he said, standing up. I stood up, and he took me into his strong arms and hugged me tenderly. I hugged him back tightly. He laughed and kissed my cheek. I simply smiled at my father as he stepped back and turned to leave. As he approached the door, he turned and looked at me. I love you, never forget. See you soon, and I hope you can work things out with Bob. I love you too, I replied as he opened the door and walked out, closing it behind him. My cell phone rang again. I looked at the screen. It was Vicki. I picked up the phone and swiped on the answer icon. Hello, woman of easy virtue, I said calmly. What the hell? What did you say to Kevin? He just kicked me out of the house. Well, that's what you get for cheating on him. Or did you think he'd just let you cheat on him? I said. Bitch, Vicki screamed. Damn you idiot. You already ruined my marriage, so why don't I ruin yours, bitch? Damn, Vicki said quietly. I sat with the phone to my ear, waiting. I heard her breathing. I heard her sobbing. I guess I deserve it. I'm sorry, she said quietly and hung up. I sat for a long time and didn't hear anything. Finally, I put the phone down and sighed. One day, I lost my husband and my best friend. And then I found out about my parents, my God. I should have been starving by now, but no. I was just tired. Not tired from sleep, just tired of life. I always thought that people who commit their own deaths were just crazy, but the way I was feeling now, I could understand that they just wanted the pain and fatigue to stop. It's not like I was going to end it all. I will get through this to the end, no matter what happens. My cell phone rang again. It was Alex. Alex. Vicki is back at the motel and knocking on Bob's door, he said. Is he answering? No. Wait, she just opened the door. He yelled at her and slammed the door in her face. She's now walking slowly back to her car. Okay, wait. Can you go up to her and tell her I want to see her? I asked. I felt a little sorry for her. I shouldn't have done this, but still. Sure, wait a second, Alex replied. I heard him yelling at her. Then I heard them talking. I heard Vicki say thank you to him. She's already on her way. Do you want me to come to the house? He asked. No, no need. I can handle Vicki. You better go home, Alex, or back to work, whichever you want. Okay, Carol, I'll call you tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Goodbye. I hung up. A short time later, there was a quiet knock on the front door. I tried to compose myself to face the bitch who ruined my marriage without killing her. I got up and went to the door. I slowly opened it. Vicki stood there crying. I waved her in. Thank you, thank you, thank you, she sobbed. Would you like coffee or a drink? I'll take a glass of wine, I said. Wine, yes, please, she said, sobbing and following me into the kitchen. I took a bottle of wine from the refrigerator and a couple of glasses from the cabinet. I poured it. Vicki sat with her head bowed, sobbing. I put the glass in front of her and sat down at the table opposite her. I was damned if I was going to console her. Did he beat you? I asked. Her head rose to look at me. She narrowed her eyes. No, he didn't, she replied, raising her glass and taking a sip of wine. What did he tell you? I asked, knowing that I had shoved her crime in her face. He said he never wanted to see me again. Then he asked how many other men I had on the sidelines. She took another long sip from her glass. How much do you cheat? I asked sarcastically. Carol, she seemed offended by my question. Answer my questions or get out of here. She sat looking at me. I really couldn't tell her mood since she looked like a raccoon, but her eyes were crinkled and her mouth was a thin line. She was angry. Well? She shook her head. Taking a deep breath, she let it out slowly. 4. Including Bob? No. You're a damn cheater. Now I know I need to get tested for illnesses. I'm so sorry, she wheezed. Oh, shut up, I screamed. I don't want to hear how sorry you are. She just looked at me, sobbing. I put my head in my hands and closed my eyes. What should I do? I wanted to tear apart the bitch sitting opposite me at the table. I wanted to break up with my husband. I wanted to break my parents apart. What the hell? Does everyone cheat on everyone? Crap, I screamed. Vicki jerked at my scream. I just shook my head, looking at her with murderous lust in my eyes. What the hell happened to you? You weren't like this in college. I don't know, Vicki began to cry. Talk to me. What made you cheat on Kevin? I asked. I don't know. Nonsense, I growled. Let me finish. I was out of town at one of the conferences that my work puts on about 3 times a year. Kevin and I had an argument before we left. He called when I arrived, trying to apologize for our argument. I just hung up on him. I was so angry. It was late Sunday night. I went to the bar and decided to get drunk. I drank 3 drinks quickly when this older man sat down next to me. He said that he wouldn't decide to get drunk. Nothing. We talked for a long time. I was a little shy, so he offered to take me to the room. There were no alarms, so I agreed. The next thing I know, I invite him inside, and we're in bed making love. It was so different from what Kevin does to me. When I woke up and heard the phone ringing in the room, he had already left. It was my wake-up call. I took a shower, got dressed, and went to breakfast. As I sat and ate, everything that happened last night came flooding back to me. I felt so ashamed, so guilty about what? Cheated on Kevin. I went to the first session, and who else did it but the guy I slept with last night? After the session, he came up to me and asked if I still wanted to get drunk. I just looked at him and hit him. He nodded and walked away. I didn't talk to him for the rest of the week. I thought a lot about what I did. I felt so guilty. I was going to tell Kevin when I got home, but I changed my mind. He would never know, and I didn't want to hurt him. I don't know what came over me. The next night I was at the bar again. Saw like crazy. I was looking for someone to be intimate with. It was exciting, and I promised myself that I would only do it when I was out of town. I didn't want to hurt Kevin. I just sat there with my mouth wide open in complete shock. I felt sick to my stomach and shook my head. How long ago was it? I asked for some reason. 5 months ago. And you were intimate with 5 guys? Yeah, 1 guy a month. How many times? Don't know. You said you go to 3 conferences a month. Yes. If you only had 1 guy a month, what did you do at the other 2 conferences? I was with the same guy at every conference that month. And Bob just happened to be the lucky one this month. No. Carol, it was an accident. I mean, oh damn, I don't know what I mean. When I saw him, he's so handsome and masculine. Ever since I started being with Kevin, I wanted Bob, but he was yours. I knew you. Dig the hole deeper, bitch, I screamed. No. Carol, I didn't mean it that way. Then how did you meet him? I got him drunk on the first night of the conference. I helped him up to his room and became intimate with him. When he woke up the next morning, I was sitting there, naked and smiling at him. He went crazy, screaming and screaming that you will kill him. I told him that you would never know and that I got him drunk so I could be intimate with him. He became even more crazy. I had to hit him to shut him up. Listen to me. I told him that there is no way for you to know. You didn't know that we were both at the same conference. And if he was silent and was with me until the end of the conference, I would never tell you. So you blackmailed him. I assume when you came back you blackmailed him again, I asked. I hate to admit it, but yes, sorry. You damn prostitute, if he refused to be with you, would you tell me? Yeah, just to show him I'm serious. Well, that's a lie. Vicki looked at me as if I had hit her again. I'm not lying. Nonsense. You lie to Kevin all the time. I heard you lie to him. Plus, you lied to him on your wedding day, I screamed. I didn't lie on my wedding day, Vicki screamed. Of course I lied. Remember that part about rejecting everyone else? She just looked at me like I was crazy. Then a light bulb went on in her head. Crap. Yeah, you're up to your ears in this, I said, shaking my head. She laid her head gently on the table and began to cry. God, I hated her, but I still loved her. We've been friends longer than Bob, and I have been married. She was like part of my family. How's your head? I asked. She's killing me. I have some pain medicine. Can I have a pair? She asked. I wouldn't have mentioned it otherwise. I got up and went to the medicine cabinet in the main bathroom. I took out 3 tablets and brought them to her. I got her a glass of water. She took them from me, put them in her mouth, and quickly drank them. We better get you to bed. These pills will put you to sleep. Thank you. You are very kind to me. Or will I not wake up? I laughed at her. She just looked at me with pain in her eyes. Vicki slowly climbed into bed and gently laid her head on the pillow. She didn't even undress. She closed her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly. Nodding, I closed the door and went to the kitchen. I cleared the table, took the last sip of wine straight from the bottle, and threw it in the trash. Looking at the clock on the wall, I saw that it was still quite early. It was only 9 o'clock in the evening. I suddenly realized that I was hungry. The wine eased the pain a little, and now my stomach was complaining that it needed food. I stepped into the kitchen and looked into the refrigerator. There was nothing tasty in it, although I knew I should eat something and close the refrigerator door. I looked around the kitchen and just felt tired. Shrugging, I went into the bedroom, undressed, turned off the light, and climbed under the covers. She closed her eyes and quickly fell asleep. When I woke up, I felt sleepy. Although I quickly fell asleep, the night passed restlessly. The bright sunshine tormented my eyes and mind. I went to the bathroom, did what needed to be done, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. I was surprised to see Vicki sitting at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee. I frowned at her, slowly walking towards the closet to get a mug. I poured myself a cup and sat down at the table, carefully sipping the hot coffee. "Good morning," Vicki whispered quietly. "Damn it," I growled. Vicki sobbed as she continued to drink her coffee. I just closed my eyes, trying to decide what to do. I was young enough to start over with someone new if I wanted to. But whether I wanted to go through this whole dating process, I didn't know. All other thoughts were about whether I loved Bob and whether I could forgive what he did to us. If I wanted to divorce him, we're lucky we don't have children. In fact, I don't even remember if we discussed it. He had his career and I had mine. I sometimes thought about children, but I never told Bob about it. I don't know why I didn't do this. There were a lot of things I didn't know. Nodding, I returned to the bedroom to get my cell phone. Returning to the kitchen, I pressed one of the contacts. The phone rang. Then he answered. "It's me. Come here as quickly as possible," I said and hung up. "Who is this?" Vicki asked. "It's none of your business," I said, frowning at her. Then I dialed another number. "He'll come here, just come before him, please." I nodded and hung up. Vicki didn't say anything. I just looked at her, narrowing my eyes, sipping my coffee. God, I hated her for what she did to my marriage. I also hated Bob for what he did, but I still had some affection, if not love, for him in my heart. I wondered if I could ever forgive him or trust him again. Well, I think I can find out the answer after our conversation. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. I was hoping it was Alex and not Bob. I stood up and looked through the peephole. It was Alex. I opened the door to let him in and Bob pulled up in the driveway. I waved Alex into the house and waited for Bob. He approached with a frown on his face. Then he shook his head and stopped in front of me. He leaned in to kiss me and I turned my head and stepped back. I looked at him and shook my head. His shoulders slumped. He shook his head again and entered the house. I closed the door and went into the kitchen, followed by Bob. Alex stood behind the chair I was sitting on. "What the hell?" Bob grumbled. "Shut up and sit down," I said sternly. "Would you like a cup of coffee, Alex?" "Yes, thank you," he replied very politely. "Bean?" I asked. "Of course I haven't slept much lately." "Is this a yes or no?" I asked. "Sorry, honey, it was yes, please." Nodding, I poured 2 cups. I knew what Bob liked, so I added cream and sugar for him. For Alex, I stepped aside so he could pour himself. He simply took the mug and sipped carefully. I sat up and looked at Bob, who was staring at Alex. Vicki just sat there, sobbing. I think she knew things were going to go wrong. "First and foremost," I said, "Bob, if you lie to me, we're done. Got it?" "Yes, Carol." "Vicki, we're done anyway, but if you lie to me anymore, I'll rip you apart. Got it?" "Yes, Carol." "Okay, now Bob, what were you even thinking about?" I screamed. My anger towards both of them simmered in my mind. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned and looked at Alex. He didn't say anything, just calmly looked into my eyes. I nodded, starting to calm down. He let go of my shoulder and continued drinking his coffee. I looked at Bob. He stared at Alex again. "Bean," I screamed. "What?" he said, looking at me. "Don't worry about Alex. Worry about me and what I can do. Alex is only here for my protection. He works for my father and yesterday was the first time I met him. So take your mind off and tell me, why?" "Why what?" he asked. I simply shook my head, faced with his stubborn male pride. "Why did you continue to be intimate with this frivolous woman after returning from Atlanta?" "I told you." "Well, that answer wasn't good enough, so give me the real reason." "Okay, bitch, she got me drunk, used me, and then blackmailed me into staying with her for the rest of the conference and when we got back to Chicago." Happy? He said. Yes, that's what she told me. But I just stopped there. But what? He asked. Nothing. Get out of my sight, I grumbled. I needed to think. I needed to talk to my dad and mom. Hell, she wasn't supposed to be back until Friday night. Now what to do with Vicki? What? Bob asked, his voice tinged with anger. I said get out of my sight, which means get the hell out of here. He looked at me, then at Vicki. Bitch, he told Vicki, rising. Alex walked him to the door. When Alex returned, he sat down next to me. He put his hand on my shoulder for a second. I sighed and nodded. You don't need to look after him anymore. Vicki will stay here. Okay, if that's what you want. Yes, thank you for everything you did. Please, Alex said, standing up and walking away. Who is this guy? Vicki asked. Like I said, my father's friend. I was afraid the whole time he was here. What does he do for your father? Kill people. No, no, you stupid bitch. He's the head of security at my dad's company. Oh, so you'll let me stay here? As long as you find a place for yourself, yes. I don't have any money until Friday when I get paid. Kevin cut me off from all bank accounts. The only thing I have is my credit card, which I can't use until payday. I'll lend you some money until Friday, and then you're on your own. Got it. Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for being so good to me. You want me to invite Kevin here? He still needs to give you half the money in the bank. I know. No, let him calm down for a couple of days. What does my face look like? She asked. You still look like a raccoon, I said, chuckling. Bitch, she said quietly. Bitch, I replied. Does your head still hurt? Yes. Okay, I'll give you one pill, otherwise it will make you sleepy. Is that why you gave me 3 last night? Yes. Bitch. Bitch. For the rest of the week, Vicki and I went to work. When we got home, I would cook dinner for us, and then we would just watch TV. We rarely spoke to each other. She watched TV in the living room, and I watched TV in the living room. I still hated the bitch for being intimate with my husband, but she and I, were not married. And the moment she was alone, she left here, never showing up at my door again. On Monday, I still went to the doctor as a patient without an appointment. This meant that I had to wait until she had a free moment to receive me. When her nurse came to get me, I had only been there for 5 minutes, and I didn't have to wait long for her to come in and see me. What's going on, Carol? She asked with concern in her voice. Lots of things, I said. Tell me about it. It says here, she said, looking at the computer. Do you want to donate blood for diseases? Why? Bob has been cheating on me. He's been cheating on me for a month now. I know who he cheated with her, and she was intimate with at least 4 other men besides Bob. So I want to know if they gave me anything. I'm so sorry to hear that, Carol. I thought you and him were such a couple that something like this would never happen. I'm so sorry. She typed on the computer while she spoke. Someone is coming to take you to the lab and then back here. I want to talk a little more before you go. Okay? Of course, doctor, and thank you for seeing me so quickly. No problem, darling. See you in a little bit. And she left the room. A few minutes later, a nurse came and took Vicki to the same lab where I had my tests. She was sitting next to me. She looked very worried. I was also very worried. She is a friend, despite the fact that I hated her now. We've been friends longer than Bob, and I have been married. She was like part of my family. What's wrong? She gave you a hard time, didn't she? Denise asked. Who are you, please? Vicki answered. I'm Dr. Tomlin, Dr. Carroll. Who are you? I'm Victoria Harold, but you can call me Vicki. Okay, Vicki, let's take a look at your nose and eyes, okay? Vicki nodded, and the doctor walked over to the examination table. Lie down, honey, Denise said, moving the overhead light to illuminate Vicki's face. Denise leaned in close to Vicki, examining her eyes and nose without touching her. Okay, Vicki, I'm going to check your nose. I have to touch it, and it might hurt. Vicki nodded. Denise put on a pair of latex gloves, then pressed her fingers as gently as possible against Vicky's nose, one on each side. Vicky yelped in pain. "Sorry, honey. Yes, your nose is broken. Now let's look at your eyes." Denise took one of those 90% flashlights from the wall holder and walked closer, shining it into Vicky's eyes. Leaning forward, Denise looked into her left eye, then her right, and then her left again. She stretched out, made a face as if she was puzzled, and then returned to look again. She looked first into the right eye, then into the left. Then she looked at Vicky's nose. "Open your mouth, honey, say ah," Denise said. Vicky did as Denise said. Denise looked into her mouth and down her throat. Shaking her head, Denise pushed back the overhead light. "Sit down, dear," slowly. Vicky sat up slowly, looking warily at Denise. "Your nose is broken and needs to be set. It's going to hurt." "Okay, what else?" Vicky asked with concern. "Nothing much, but you have a little fluid running down your throat from your nose. Are you wearing glasses?" "No." Your left eye seems longer than your right. Can you see well?" "Only with the right eye, now that you mention it," Vicky replied. "Well, as your face heals, it may go away. If not, I'd suggest you see an ophthalmologist and get your eyes checked. Now let's fix your nose." "Fine." Vicky closed her eyes. "Everything is ready. You need to be very careful. I'll have the nurse come and tape your nose so it doesn't move. I'll also give you a prescription for painkillers and anti-inflammatories." "Thank you, doctor," Vicky said enthusiastically. "My head is better now." "Okay, anything else?" Denise asked. "Yes, she needs the same blood tests as me," I said. "Okay, do you know where to go, Carol? When the nurse is done with her, take her there, and then you can go. I'll call you when the tests are ready, okay?" "Of course, doctor, no problem," I said. A few minutes later, a nurse came and taped Vicky's nose to keep it in place. "Do you girls know where to go?" asked the nurse. "We know, thank you," I replied. "Follow me, Vicky." We went to the lab, Vicky came back, and they drew blood. She walked out, walking carefully. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I don't like needles or the sight of blood." "All you have to do is close your eyes," I said, laughing. "Shut up," she replied. We went out to our cars and drove to the pharmacy. We went inside and went to the pharmaceutical department. We had to wait 10 minutes for them to prepare the recipes. When we got back to the cars, Vicky opened her pain pills and swallowed one without water. When we got home, she took one of her anti-inflammatory pills and then went to her room to rest. I still didn't know what to do. During the trip to the doctor, I didn't think about anything. I knew why I was there, but I turned off my mind and went on autopilot. Now I had to think about something I really didn't want to think about: my cheating husband and his mistress. From my point of view, there was an awful lot of time left until Friday. I think I needed to talk to my mother, even though what she was doing now disgusted me. Sitting at the kitchen table, I put my head in my hands in frustration. I must have dozed off because Vicky gently shook my shoulder. I opened my eyes and looked at her. She stepped back. I guess my frown scared her. Raising my head, I straightened up, my back cracking. Shaking my head, I looked at Vicky, who was standing and looking at me. "I assume you're hungry?" I asked. "Yes. Are you going to make dinner, or should I do it?" she asked. "How's your head?" "Not as bad as when we returned from the doctor. It still hurts." "What would you like?" I asked, although I didn't know what food we had. "Don't know." Getting up, I felt terrible. I opened the refrigerator and looked inside. There wasn't much there. There were eggs, lots of eggs. Bob loved his eggs. There were also ham steaks and hash browns in a bag. I got eggs, ham, and hash browns. Cooking dinner was easy. After eating, Vicky cleaned up the kitchen while I went into the living room and lay down on the sofa. After about 5 minutes, I got up and hurried to the bedroom. I took a shower, letting the hot water run down my body. When I was dry, I climbed into bed and fell asleep. When Friday evening came, I sat in the living room and waited for my father to bring my mother. I needed to talk to both of them, especially with Mom. I watched as their car pulled into the driveway. I told Vicki to disappear. She went up to her room with a couple of sodas and chips. It was time to talk to my mother and her unfaithful husband. Even if they were my parents, that's how I now thought of them. Maybe I'm too judgmental. I don't know, and I don't care. I opened the door before my father could knock. I hugged him, then hugged my mother. "And how is Frederick?" I whispered in her ear. Mom recoiled, looking at me. She then turned to her father and glared at him. He just looked at her calmly. She shook her head, frowning at him. When she turned back to me, she was smiling. "He was wonderful, but I'm not here to talk about him." "Ah, but that's what you're here for, Mom. You're here to talk to me about your cheating spouse, so I think you can start with Dad and then yourself." I stepped aside so they could walk over to the couch while I closed and locked the door. When I turned around, Mom was scowling at Dad. I just shook my head at both of them. I sat down on a chair that I placed opposite the sofa and just looked at each of them. "Carol, your dad and I know everything about your agreement. I just can't believe it. Believe that he cheated on you and then you cheated on him. What the hell?" "Carol," the father began. It was a way for her to cheat on you, not revenge. Revenge is to divorce your cheating ass and take your last cent. So don't tell me she did it out of revenge. I shouted the last thing. My mother looked at me with fear in her eyes. And the way she's looking at me now, I wonder how many other men she's slept with since you cheated on me without telling you. "Carol," my mother screamed. "What?" "I see the fear in your eyes. Fear that what I just said would be revealed tonight. You are afraid that your dad will suspect that you have been cheating on him for a long time. Well, is this true?" I screamed again. The mother just sat there, lips pursed, fear filling her eyes, clutching her purse tightly. She was scared, and I knew why she was afraid. Not in fact, but simply in the way she was looking at me now. "You better tell him. He deserves to know. After all, you had an agreement that you could be with one man. Better tell him about everyone else now. Now he can divorce you without losing everything." I sat looking at my mother. I knew I was right about her. I also knew that I had just destroyed my parents' marriage, or that my mother did it with my help. "Jennifer?" the father asked softly. Mom sat, tightly clutching her purse. Her eyes are narrowed at me, her shoulders are raised, her lips are pursed. "Can we talk about this at another time?" Mom asked quietly. "No," said the father. "Herman, we'll talk about this when we get home," Mom ordered. "How do you plan to get there?" asked the father. Mom just turned to him and glared at him. Her father looked at her, reached out and grabbed her hair, pulling her into his lap. I just smiled. "Why? Don't know." "How many?" the father shouted. "5, Mom wheezed. "What?" the father shouted. "5, Mom said in a loud, clear voice. "When you return home, I want to know their names, how long they have been your lovers, and how many times each of them has been with you. Without this information, you may not return home. If you have this information, then we'll talk. No divorce." "Understood," said the father, looking at the mother. Mom simply nodded. The father stood up and left, slamming the front door on his way out. Mom just lay there and cried. I just sat there shaking my head. "Mom, get up from the floor." She groaned as she rose to her knees, then sat back down on the couch and simply looked at me with sad eyes. I just stared back at her. We looked at each other for a long time without saying a word. "What the hell are you?" I said. "What did you call me?" Mom shouted at me. "You know, isn't that the word they used in your time? Or do you prefer something else?" I just smiled at her as she processed it. Her shoulders slumped and her head dropped. She was sobbing again. "What were you thinking about, Mom? He cheated on me." "Yes, I did, and you had an agreement." "What happened, Mom?" "You want to hear the whole story so you can continue to insult me?" she asked. "No more insults. Just tell me what happened." "Fine. Okay. Crap," Mom screamed. I've never heard her use such words. I just sat and looked at her. She looked at the coffee table between us, her hands clutching her purse so tightly that her knuckles were white. I got up and walked over to her. After all, she was my mother. She may have been guilty, but she was my mother. I took the purse out of her hands and put it on the table. Then I hugged her. Her arms quickly wrapped around me, and she hugged me tightly. She began to sob. "Oh my God, oh my God. I really ruined everything," she wheezed. "Let's see. He gave you a chance. I'm sure he'll want some kind of compensation from you. He may want to have an affair or several with someone or many. Let's see. Now tell me everything." "Can I have a drink first?" she asked. "Certainly." "Wine?" I asked. "Yes, please. A large glass of wine will help." I went and brought 2 large glasses of wine, placing them on the table. Mom reached out, took hers, and took a long sip. I giggled, went back to the kitchen, and brought the bottle. Mom looked at me and smiled. "It's going to be a long night." About a year after I found out. "No, this is wrong. After I found out your father was cheating on me, and we made our vows in my ridiculous agreement, I met a man at a conference here in Chicago. He was handsome and looked very masculine, and he immediately started flirting with me. Although I told him that I was married, of course, an agreement was always on my mind, and I thought that this man could be the one. One evening we had dinner, and he invited me to his room. We had intimacy. Do you want details? God, no. Continue. The next day I was ready to go to his room again. He was very attentive and caring. Then he introduced his wife to me. I just turned around and left. I made a mistake I never thought I would make, being with a married man. But it was so nice to have another partner. I was looking forward to being with him again and again to fulfill the agreement, but it seemed like it couldn't be with him. I was such an idiot. He didn't wear a ring, but I had to ask. He knew that I was married. He should have said something, but didn't. Mom stopped, taking another sip of wine. I just waited for her to continue. Then I had a thought. How many times did Dad? You know, with that woman you found out about? I asked, raising my eyebrows. He was only with her for a couple of months. He told me that they had about 20 close relationships. It was hard for me to believe it, but I didn't say anything. He told me that I could be with some guy 30 times to get revenge. I nodded at this, and we wrote it down on paper. Did you really sign the paper? Yes, your father insisted. So where did I stop? You just found out that your first partner was married, I said. Yes, I was devastated, but so excited about what happened. I wanted more. Mother, I said. You don't use words like that, she asked, raising her eyebrows. Okay, continue. The next man I met was at a bar during one of my bachelorette parties with, well, you don't need to know their names. Were they all married? I asked. Yes. Did any of them cheat on their husbands? Yes. How do you think I found out about your father? One of them seduced him and told me about it 2 months after they had everything. I almost beat her up. I never spoke to her again, and she never joined us again. I think her husband beat her. I don't think they divorced because they had 2 children. Anyway, a very handsome young man asked me to dance. While we danced, he pressed himself against me. He was very attractive, and I was so horny that I just followed him to his house. He was wonderful. I saw him 4 times. Should I tell you their names so we can write it down for your father? She asked. I stood up, raising my eyebrows at her. I took a pen and paper. What was the first guy's name? I asked. Gus Middleton. Next up was Manny Haroldson. So, Gus once, Manny 4? I asked. Well, not exactly. Yes, that's how many times I've been with them. We weren't just together once every time. How many times then? Gus was very energetic. We were together 3 times that night. Manny was so young, his desire didn't fade all night. We were together until I was tired every time. I don't know how many times this happened. So should I count each time as one or... She left the question unanswered. Don't know. If he never stopped, I guess it counts once every time. I think you and Dad will have to discuss this. Fine. Just write down 4. Who was next? Phil Cavender was next. I met him at another bar I started going to after Manny, and I broke up. Manny left me after finding a girl his age. Phil was my age at the time. He was looking for a married woman to date. We went to him, and we started a relationship. I dated him for 2 months until I found out that he had other women. It wasn't a big surprise, but I didn't want to be in the background. He dated me once. A week for 2 months, so about 8 times, depending on how many Wednesdays there were in the month. Did you ever go back to Dad after these meetings? I asked. No, I always cleaned myself up before returning home. Didn't you notice? I took good care of myself. Did you use any precautions? Yes, I took measures to avoid unwanted consequences. Thank God. So, am I his daughter? I asked. Of course, honey. Oh God, were you worried about that? A little. Continue, I said. Mom took another sip of wine and nodded. Next was Dick Lauder. He was attractive and charming. We met at a dance after Phil. We were together for only a month. He really valued our meetings. After him, there was Andy Mendelbaum, about my age. He said he was single, and we spent several evenings together. After Andy, I stopped going out with my friends. The last one was Frederick. I never learned his last name. He was tall, dark-haired, and attractive. We spent a week together. Hawaii. We had a close relationship, but not like others. He was a very attentive and caring person. Mom, what was his origin? I don't know why I asked about this. He was African American. Mom, did Dad know about this? No, and don't tell him about it. I won't. Why didn't you move forward with Frederick? We spent time together enjoying each other's company. I treasure the moments we shared. Have you had a relationship with another woman? No, we had purely friendly relations. How did he convince the three of you to spend time together? For me, it was just communication and relaxation. I was glad to be in the company of nice people. So from what you said, you had about 29 encounters. What? You're one short of the limit that Dad set. The only problem is that you've been with 5 men, plus one with whom you had a platonic relationship. But I never crossed the line with Frederick. I never asked how many times Beth Ann communicated with Dad. Beth Ann? Beth Ann Carpenter? Damn, you didn't hear that from me, Mom said. Isn't she too young for Daddy? I thought so too, said my mother with surprise on her face. She's my age. What was she doing in your company? I asked. No, they were all your age except me and Katie Wilkins. What? Did Katie cheat on Richard? Yes, and she was the most active in it. She said that Richard wanted it. It's strange, but she did it for him. Unbelievable. I had a thought. I looked at my mother and nodded. What? She asked. Nothing. I just thought I could offer Bob one condition to try to repair our relationship. What condition? Mom asked. It doesn't matter. I don't think he'll agree. If so, I'll give him a chance. If not, I'll have to get a divorce. Oh God, are you going to date other men? I'll be honest, our conversation made me very emotional, and I thought about the future, regardless of whether it will be Bob or someone else. Oh, Mom said quietly. I sat looking out the window, lost in my thoughts. Mom pulled me by the hand, bringing me back to reality. What? I wheezed. I should probably go home and talk to your dad, Mom said. No, he will come here and I will be the mediator. I took the phone and dialed the number. He answered the third call. Hi, he said. Dad, it's me. Come here, please, I said. Why should I? He asked angrily. 2 reasons. Me and the fact that Mom told me everything. And by the way, she met less times than you, I said smugly. What? Just come. I have all the information you asked for. Okay, I'll be there in a while. Okay, love you. See you later. I passed out. Will he come? Mom asked. Yes. We poured ourselves more wine while we waited for his arrival. I sat next to my mother, hugging her. I just held her while she cried quietly. I knew she was nervous and afraid of what would happen next. Me too. But I wouldn't let my dad divorce my mom without a fight. The same was true for my mother. When the doorbell rang, I went and opened it. Dad stood there, looking a little embarrassed. I invited him in. "No, sit next to Mom," I ordered as he walked towards the chair. Making a dissatisfied face, he did as I said. He didn't look at her. I simply shook my head as I sat down on the chair opposite them. "So," I said loudly, "everything will be as I say. If you don't like it, that's your problem. This is the information you asked for from your wife." I handed him a piece of paper. He took it, frowning. "And while she's dated more men than you and Beth Ann crazy, she's dated fewer times than you." He looked at me in shock, then turned to Mom. "Did you tell her?" he screamed. "Not on purpose. It happened by accident," I said quietly. This brought Daddy's attention back to me. "Don't worry, it won't go beyond this room." Dad nodded, looking at the piece of paper. He narrowed his eyes. "Now you can't say that Mom was with Frederick in Hawaii without an arrangement," he said. "Dad," I said, "just listen, don't judge." "Okay, I'm listening." "Honey, he wasn't like the others. I'll tell you, he had another woman that he spent time with." "Then why did he take you with him?" Dad asked. "Because I enjoyed his company." "So you were in a relationship." "Not in the way you think," I interrupted. "What?" "You asked how many times and with whom she was. Nothing was said about other details," I said. My father's eyes opened wide at my words. I just smiled at him. "So the only condition of your agreement that she broke was the number of men." I was waiting. Mom was waiting. Then an idea came to me. I nodded and looked at them both. "If you want, she will allow you to meet 5 women, but without serious relationships. And she agrees to never see another man again as long as you both live." "What?" Mom screamed. Dad looked at her, then at me. He shook his head. "No, it's okay. I just want my wife back, if that's what she wants." "Oh, yes, I do," said Mom. "I'll do anything for you." I was surprised to hear this, but I didn't show it. I just sat and looked at them both. Then they kissed. "Stop, stop. Go home. Enjoy each other's company. I don't need to see or hear this," I screamed. "Sorry, honey," Mom said, standing up. "Yes, sorry, honey," Dad said, following Mom. "What are you going to do with Bob?" "I'll tell you after I talk to him on Tuesday," I replied. After they left, I sat with my head down, my eyes closed, trying to recover from everything I had heard that evening. I heard the creaking of the stairs and realized that Vicki was coming down. I just sat there, rubbing my face and trying to clear my mind of everything I had learned from my parents. Am I the only one who doesn't cheat in marriage? What the... "Are you okay?" Vicki asked quietly next to me. "Yes, I'm fine. You're all crazy," I replied. She sighed and I heard her leave. I poured myself another glass of wine and drank it. By the time I got into bed, I was relaxed enough to fall asleep without any problems. I got up and went to my bedroom. The next day I sat at the computer, typing up a document that I planned to present to Bob on Tuesday. On Monday, I was going to see a lawyer. Yes, I was going to prepare the divorce papers. When I heard Vicki enter the office, I closed the document and turned in my chair. "You need to talk to Kevin," I said evenly. "I know, but I'm scared." "I'll call him and ask him to come here." "Okay, thank you." I called Kevin. He reluctantly agreed to come. He knew Vicki was here. I told him he better come. He showed up about half an hour later. "So, Kevin, sit on the couch." "Vicki, sit on the chair. Do you want something to drink?" "No?" "Then let's begin. Kevin, you have the floor. But there are rules. No shouting, no insults. I will stop whoever starts, okay?" They both nodded. I smiled at them. "Kevin, start." "I just want to say that I loved Vicki throughout our marriage, right up until the moment I found out about her infidelity. I understand the pain you went through when you found out." I nodded to him. "As for getting her back, that's a difficult question. There is one way I could consider it. She needs to admit all her mistakes right here and now." So without a guarantee, I asked. Yes, otherwise, no way. Vicki, and tell the truth, you know I know. Vicki nodded, took a deep breath, and let it out slowly. Kevin, my love, I loved you throughout our time together. What I did with others had nothing to do with you or my love for you. I was stupid and succumbed to weakness. The last 5 months have been the worst mistake of my life. Yes, I was unfaithful 5 times with 5 different men. For this, I am very sorry, and I am ready to do everything to correct the situation. I will never fail again. Did it ever happen that I returned home after your meetings? Asked Kevin. No. Like I said, it wasn't about you. I didn't mean to hurt you or humiliate you. Then why did you do it? This is crazy. When I did it, I felt good. But then the guilt ate me up, and I thought I was going to die. Then I came home to you, and you helped me forget about the guilt. The first time I cheated on you was by accident. I got drunk because of our quarrel before the conference. A pleasant man helped me to the room, and the next moment we were already together. I lay with regret and fear, realizing that I liked it. Confessed to you, but then I thought that I didn't want to hurt you. You would never know, and I liked this new feeling. I knew that this was also wrong. I took precautions and hoped that these men were healthy. Since then, my good friend helped me understand the mistake. You saw the result. I love you, and I am very sorry for hurting both of us. Vicki burst into tears. Kevin just sat there, looking at her. Kevin, I asked quietly. His head turned towards me. Why did you let her stay here? She's my best friend. My husband had the choice after the first time to say no, even if Vicki promised to tell him. He decided to continue. She blackmailed him into continuing. I have not forgiven her and may never forgive her. But I love her. She has always been my best friend. Did she blackmail him? Kevin growled. Damn, Vicki said. Yes, it was. What are you going to do with Bob? Asked Kevin. I will offer him an option. Either we stay together under certain conditions or divorce. If he agrees, we will be together, but I will closely monitor him. If not, I will divorce him. Which option is this? Asked Kevin. I'm not going to tell anyone but Bob. You'll have to come up with your own version, Kevin. Something you can live with and something she can agree with. I see. So you won't share? No. Does Vicki know? Kevin asked. No. Vicki looked at me in surprise. Will she ever find out? No. Nobody but Bob and I will ever know. I think I need to think this over. I'll leave you for now. I'll call if I decide we need to continue talking. I nodded. Vicki nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Kevin stood up and left the house. The rest of the day was pretty boring. One more day and I'll see a lawyer. Then the next one will be hard for me and Bob. On Monday morning, I called into work to take a couple of days off. My boss was sympathetic to my situation. I was able to meet with a lawyer the same day. She reluctantly agreed to prepare the documents the way I wanted. Finally, I convinced her. She said she would have them ready, filed, and send me copies by courier by Tuesday morning. I wrote her a check and went home. I needed to complete my plan for Bob. Sitting in front of the computer, I started working. I typed out what I wanted to achieve, then drafted a document that looked like a legal document. In fact, he could become one in the near future. After printing it out, I put it in a folder and put it in a locked drawer so that Vicki couldn't get to it if she decided to get curious. Tomorrow night will be a difficult evening. I needed to somehow get Vicki out of the house. I called her mom. I asked, begging her. Finally, she agreed to invite Vicki to her place for dinner tomorrow. I had to cheat a little, but as far as I was sure, she and Kevin were going to make up, and that's what I hinted to her mom. Whether or not this happens will not matter after tomorrow evening. I spent the rest of Monday thinking a lot about what I was going to offer Bob. I realized that I don't care. I knew he wanted to get back with me, but I also knew he wouldn't like my decision. And the only thought that came to my mind was, well, too bad. On Tuesday night, I cooked a nice dinner. While he was getting ready, Bob rang the doorbell. I went and let him in. He tried to hug me. I stepped back, shaking my head. I led him into the dining room and pointed to a seat. I went to the kitchen and started taking out the dishes I had prepared, placing the bottle of wine next to Bob's plate. "Can you open it, please?" I asked sweetly. "Of course," he replied. I was almost shaking with nerves when I returned to the kitchen. I brought the rest of the dinner and put it in the dining room. I sat down opposite Bob. He looked at me, trying to determine my mood and decision. "Do you want to say a blessing?" I asked. Not really," he replied. Nodding, I lifted my glass of wine and took a long sip. When I put it down, I realized that I had drunk the entire glass in one gulp. "Are you nervous?" Bob asked, raising his glass. He also drank it in one gulp. "Me too." I smiled. He grinned. "Do you want to eat?" I asked. "Not really. Sorry." "It's okay," I replied, rubbing my hands on my thighs. "Why don't we go to the living room?" "It could." "Sure, why not?" We went to the living room. I thought about this all day. We both sat down on the sofa. I sat down in front of two envelopes on the coffee table. Bob sat down next to me. Not too close, but not too far either. "I think that's it," I said. "Yes, I think so," Bob tried to say calmly. "As you can see, I have two documents here. I can tell you that one is for divorce, which you probably already understood. The other is a postnuptial agreement. It states the conditions under which we will remain together, but if you win or cheat on me again, then the divorce will take place and you will get nothing." "What if you cheat on me?" asked Bob. "I'll get to this. You need to agree to everything in the post-nuptial agreement for us to stay together. There are several conditions, one of which I already told you. The next condition is that I will be able to date other people at any time, with whomever I want, and anywhere of my choice, as long as I want. If I inform you about this in advance, you will not be able to do anything about it. If I do this and you find out after the fact, you can initiate a standard divorce provided by law." Bob's eyes were wide with what I could only assume was horror. His mouth moved, but there was no sound. I just sat there looking at him. No smile, no smug look, just calm. Finally, he found his voice. "This is nonsense," he shouted. I handed him the first envelope. "You can read it and think about it," I said. Growling, he snatched the envelope from my hand. He opened it and took out an agreement. He looked at him for a long time. When he looked up at me, I handed him the second envelope. "This is a divorce agreement unless you agree to the post-nuptial agreement. You will see that you only get your clothes, car, tools, and the like. The house is left to me along with the furniture and other things. Please read carefully." He spent a long time reading the divorce agreement. "It states that the reason is irreconcilable differences. I expect you to sign either an agreement or a divorce document before you leave. If you do not sign either, then a new petition for divorce due to infidelity will be filed tomorrow. There's no room to maneuver." Bob just looked at me. Growling, he took the pen that I had conveniently placed on the table. "What do you want me to sign?" he asked quietly. "Bob, I loved you very much, but it doesn't matter to me anymore, unfortunately. Our marriage is broken. I still love you. I can tell you that." "Are we going to sleep in different rooms?" "No, our marriage will continue as before. I will not treat you like a cheated husband in the modern sense. We will have a close relationship. I will enjoy it with you as before. The only difference is that in the future I may date other people, or I may not. Or I may decide to try something new, who knows? I will treat you the same as I did 2 weeks ago. If not, you can always get a divorce. With me. The thought of you being with another man, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that." "Shouldn't you have thought of that the second time you met Vicki?" I asked quietly. His head turned and he stared at me. Then he lowered his head. "You're right. Would you forgive me if I gave her up?" "In time. You'd be out of favor for a long time, though." Bob looked at me with sadness on his face. He put pen to paper and signed the divorce agreement, just as I expected. He handed it to me. I had tears in my eyes. He stood up. I got up. I hugged him. He hugged me back. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "Me too," I replied. We stood hugging each other for a long time. We both cried about a broken marriage. "Can I call you?" he asked. "Yes. Maybe we can start over." "Who knows?" I answered, hiding a smile on his shoulder. "Can I ask one question?" "You can ask as much as you want," I replied. "Would you really date other men if I signed this ridiculous agreement?" "Yes. I would do this to make you understand that he won't get away with this. It's clear." "Do you want to stay for dinner?" I asked. "Why not? You've always been a great cook." That evening we had dinner and talked about various things not relating to our marriage. Who knows what will happen next? I might meet someone. He might meet someone. Hell, we might even get back together, but not before I start a new life. Yes, I want justice, and I will get it. Maybe I'll wait until we're back together, but I doubt that will be the case. What the hell? John and Ann. It was a 4th of July meeting, this time at Ed Anderson's. We all live in a rural area near a major city in the US where there are still gravel roads and 2-lane highways, and everyone drives pickup trucks. There were 4 of us playing volleyball. Me, John Pickering, Bill Alden, Missy Alden, and Jesse Martin. Jesse and I were 2 points behind when Bill hit the ball. Jesse tried to get it in time, but she fell just short, and we were 3 points behind. 1 more point for the other team, and they are the winners. This time it was Missy who served, and she simply tossed the ball over the net to my side. I stood deep and missed the answer. It was a game. "Good game," Bill shouted, laughing. "Shut up, Bill," Jesse replied, laughing too. "John needs a hug?" Missy asked. "No, John doesn't need a hug, Missy," my wife Ann shouted from the sideline. "Are you ready to go, honey?" I asked, approaching her. Looking at her, I couldn't understand what was wrong, but something was wrong. But it was getting late. The sun was starting to dip towards the western horizon, causing a few clouds to shine brightly. "Yes, we can go if you want," Ann said as I hugged her. Ann didn't hug me back for some reason. However, she relaxed in my arms. I mentally shrugged and took her hand as she picked up her purse with her other hand. She was wearing a bikini with a cape around her waist and a buttoned-up blouse tied just under the bikini top. My Ann is a beautiful woman of 38 years old. We have been married for 10 years. 10 happy years. I helped her into the truck, closing the door behind her. I sat down and started the engine, changing gear. I pulled out of Ed's driveway and headed down the gravel road toward the highway. It wasn't far, about half a mile. Ann remained silent until we approached the highway. "I slept with Ed," she said. I was shocked to say the least. I had to jerk the steering wheel to keep from going off the road. I hit the brakes hard, sliding to a noisy stop on the gravel. My mind was numb, my heart was racing. I was stunned. Ann just sat there as I turned my head to look at her. Taking a deep breath, I held my breath. Then he exhaled slowly and tried to relax. "What the hell? What are you doing?" I said quietly. "I slept with Ed today." "What the hell?" I shouted. I turned the steering wheel and slowly turned around. "What are you doing?" asked Ann. "Where are you going?" "I think I left something at Ed's." "What?" I didn't say a word. "John, turn around. I want to go home. We need to talk about this." "Please," Ann said softly. "John, don't go back there. I don't want you to beat Ed up." I heard her son. She was crying now. I clenched my jaw so hard that I thought I would never be able to speak again. When I pulled up to Ed's house, Ann was about to get out of the truck. "Don't you dare," I shouted. She pulled her hand away from the doorknob. "What?" "Don't get out of the truck. I'll just be a minute." "Don't you dare hurt Ed," she growled. "Don't get out of the truck. If you go out, don't bother coming back." I reached into my sun visor and pulled the folded piece of paper out from under the rubber band holding it there. I handed it to Ann. "Read this while you wait," I said as I got out of the truck. "What is this?" she asked. "Just read it. It might be interesting considering you wrote it," I said as I slammed the door. I walked down the path, trying to keep a calm face. I didn't want to give away my intentions. I pretended to be looking for something. Ed stood at the end of the driveway, watching me as I approached him. I was lucky. He didn't seem to understand. "Forgot something?" he asked smugly. As I got closer, I was still looking around as if I had dropped something. "John." I was already close enough. "Yes, it looks like my wife has lost her loyalty here," I said, hitting him. His wife, Julie, ran up to him and me. She knelt next to her husband, looking at me. "Why did you do that, John?" asked Julie. "He slept with Anne," I growled. "What is he?" "He slept with my wife," I screamed, glaring at Ed. "You son of a bitch!" Julie yelled at Ed, standing up and looking at me. Julie kicked Ed in the side. Not once, but twice. "I'm so sorry," Julie said, looking at me. "Why did you talk him into it?" I asked sarcastically. "No." Now everyone else at the party was standing around us. I looked down at Ed. "Don't ever come near my wife again," I shouted. Looking at Julie, I nodded at her, turned and walked back to the truck. Anne just looked at me as I walked. I got into the truck without saying a word to her. I didn't even look at her. I started the truck and pulled out of the driveway onto a gravel county road. He rode forward, splashing gravel with his high tail and a cloud of dust. Anne didn't say a word while I drove. I calmed down when we reached the paved highway. Looking at the floor on her side of the truck, I noticed the paper I had given her. It was open, so she must have read what she wrote. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" I asked quietly, turning onto the highway. She just looked at me with sad, depressed eyes. She shook her head. "What?" I asked. Aye, can we wait on this until we get home?" she asked. "I suppose. The question really should be whether you still have a home." Anne started crying when I said this. I just shook my head and continued driving. We were home in a few minutes. I pulled into my driveway 10 minutes after I left Ed and Julie's house. Throwing the gear shift lever into park, I turned off the engine. Julie went to open her door. "Stop," I said. She turned to look at me. What I saw in her eyes was sadness and fear. "Speak here. Tell me what happened," I demanded. Anne closed her eyes, lowering her chin to her chest. She shook her head and sobbed. Reaching down, I not so gently grabbed her chin, lifting her face and turning her head towards me. "Speak," I said quietly. Tears were now streaming down her cheeks. She nodded. "You played volleyball. I went up to the bathroom. When I left, Ed was there. I actually ran into him. He hugged me so we wouldn't fall. The next moment he was kissing me. I tried to push him away. He's much stronger than me. But after a few seconds I started kissing him back." "Why?" I asked. "Because—" "That's not the reason," I said. "I know. I knew he was hurting. Julie has a very serious infection." "Is that what he told you?" I asked. "Yes. She didn't want anyone to know, so she didn't tell anyone," Ed said. "She takes large doses of antibiotics." Continue. "I just felt sorry for him, so I let him kiss me and kissed him back. I was also pretty drunk, but that's no excuse. The next thing I know, we're in the bedroom, and he's taking off my bikini. I just lost my head and couldn't stop him to save my life. Oh God, do you want to hear the rest?" "Not now. I still haven't heard a good excuse for why you let him," I said. I felt sorry for him. "What, Julie doesn't have a mouth or a hand or an ass?" I growled. "Oh God, I didn't think about it at that moment. I'm so sorry." "Stop," I shouted. "I don't want to hear how sorry you are. I want to hear you tell me why you—" I bent down and picked up the paper on the floor at her feet. "Why did you break your wedding promise?" I shook the piece of paper in front of her face. Anne looked at me, tears streaming down her face like a river. "I just felt sorry for him." "You felt sorry for him, so you let him sleep with you. What level of pity do you have to be at to let someone sleep with you other than your husband? A little, a lot?" Anne didn't answer. She was sobbing into her hands. "You better come up with some damn good answers before you go in the house," I said as I stepped out of the truck, leaving Anne sitting there looking at me and crying. I entered the house, locking the door behind me. I took the beer from the refrigerator, unscrewing the cap from the bottle. As I sat down, I heard a knock on the door. Shaking my head, I went to see if she had an answer to my question. "Let me in," she said when I opened the door. I stood in her way. She tried to walk past me, but I didn't give in. "I need to go to the toilet," she said hoarsely. "There's a bush right there and no one around to see you," I said, closing the door. She knocked on the door for a while, then stopped. I stood at the door. She knocked softly again. I opened the door. She just stood there, frowning at me. I just looked at her blankly. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Do you have answers to my questions?" I asked in response. "Yes." I stepped aside and let her enter. "Kitchen," I said quietly. Nodding, she went to the kitchen. She saw my beer and went to the refrigerator and got herself a bottle. Sitting down, she opened it and took a long sip from the ice-cold bottle. I sat down opposite her, taking a sip of my beer, all the while looking at her and waiting. "First of all, to answer your question. Many. Secondly, I was half drunk, so I felt a lot. Since you don't want an apology, I guess I'll say that I was very, very wrong. What I did was so wrong that I wouldn't blame you if you kicked me out of here and divorced me. I would like to ask you a question." "Go ahead," I replied. "Did I ruin our marriage?" she asked, tears rolling down her beautiful blue eyes, fear in them. I looked at her for a long time. She just sat there, waiting, more and more tears flowing from her eyes as she waited for the verdict. I was so angry at her and what she did not only to us, but to me personally. I was pretty sure Ed was bragging to the other men at the party about what he had accomplished. "You ruined our marriage. Why don't you tell me?" I said. "Oh God," she said hoarsely, hanging her head and sobbing. "I can tell you, Anne, that I still love you. I can tell you that Ed was probably bragging about how intimate he was with you. I will tell you that we will never see our friends again. So you've really ruined our social life. I can tell you that it will take me a very, very, very long time to trust you again, and that it will take me a very long time to get over this. But despite all this, I will still love you. I may not touch you for a long time. I may not kiss you for a long time. I definitely won't have sex with you for a long, long time. So you have to ask yourself if you ruined our marriage." "Oh God," she said hoarsely. "Now, if you still want to live with me while I try to deal with all my anger, all the feelings of betrayal, and how my stomach turns every time I look at you, then we can work on rebuilding our marriage." "Oh God," she said hoarsely again. "And now the last question." "Yes? Do you love me?" I asked, knowing the answer. "Oh God, yes, of course I do. How could you not?" It was a stupid question. "Well, let's see. You broke your promise to me. You slept with another man and said you liked it. What else can I add?" Her head fell onto the table with a crash. I thought she passed out. So much so that I almost walked up to her, but didn't. I sat there and looked at her. "How long do you think it will take you to get over how badly I screwed everything up?" asked Anne. "Damn it, I don't know. At least 1,000,000 times longer than you thought about sleeping with him," I shouted. "Oh God," she said again. "You know this won't help?" I asked sarcastically. I know, I know. Oh, John, I know you love me, otherwise I would have left already. I would like to stay and work on repairing our marriage. I love you so much. I know I messed up, and I'll do anything." "Stop right there. You promised me this right here," I said, waving her promise at me, "and you still couldn't keep your word. What makes you think that I can even begin to trust you? And if I stop making love to you because it turns me off, then what?" "Then I think we're done for," said Anne. Anne stood up. She looked at me and sobbed. She turned and went to the bedroom. I didn't follow her, but I heard her crying and rattling things as she packed her bags. An hour later, she came out, dragging 3 suitcases behind her. "So you're leaving?" I asked, a little upset, but not heartbroken. "Yes. It looks like I've messed things up so badly that you can't forgive me, so I guess I'll go. I will contact a lawyer and begin divorce proceedings. I'll leave you the house if you leave me my truck. We can split the savings in half. Everyone will keep their retirement savings, investments, and 401k. Is that okay with you?" "Yes, If I sell the house, I will send you half of what I get from it. Can I kiss you goodbye? Asked Anne. I stood up and walked over to her. I closed my eyes, realizing that I would miss her very, very much. I pulled her into my arms. I hugged her tightly. I still love you. I will always love you. But I also hate what you did, I whispered. I understand. When we talked, I imagined how I would feel if you did what I did. I came to the same conclusions as you. I would still love you, but I would also hate you so much that I would have to leave you. And the main reason would be those letters of promise that we exchanged at our wedding. I realized how stupid I was and how stupid it was to let Ed sleep with me. And before I go, I really wanted to say how sorry I did this to you and to us. I pushed her back so I could look her in the eyes. I nodded to her. I accept your apology and will miss you very, very much. If I ever go through what you did, can I call you? And if you're not busy, can I invite you to dinner? Anne was crying even harder now. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Of course you can. I won't date anyone for a long, long time. Where are you going to go? I'll pack the rest of your things and send them, I said. I'll go to my parents for now after that. I don't know. The school year starts in a month. I really love my job, teaching kids, so I'll be nearby. Who knows, maybe we'll cross paths, she sobbed. I helped her with her bags and stood next to her truck, watching her drive away. When she disappeared from sight, I broke down and fell to the ground. I lay there for a long time. I looked up as a pair of headlights illuminated the corner. I knew it wasn't Anne, she had gone the other way. When the truck pulled up to my house, I struggled to my feet and wiped my eyes. When I could see the truck after they turned off the lights, I saw it was Julie. I shook my head. I really didn't want to talk to anyone. She stepped out of the truck, dragging her bag behind her. I just stood there and looked at her. I left this cheater. Can I stay with you, please? I have nowhere to go. Just until I get back on my feet. Please, Julie begged. I just stood there and looked at her. Then I lowered my head and shoulders, waving for her to come to me. She dropped her bag and ran into my arms. She hugged me desperately. Where's Anne? She asked, sobbing. She's gone. Why? She broke her promise. You might want to hear what I learned from that scoundrel who would soon be my ex-husband, Julie said. I walked over to where she had left her bag, picked it up, and turned towards the house. I put my arm around her shoulders as I walked past. Why don't we go inside and talk? I'm hungry, so I guess you are too. Yes, thank you, she replied, following me inside. In the kitchen, I checked what we had. Almost the only thing we had was everything for sandwiches. After taking out the sandwich meat and condiments, I took the bread and placed everything on the table. Sit down, I said. Is there anything I can do to help? Asked Julie. Well, I'll have a beer. Take what you want to drink from the refrigerator, I replied. Smiling, she took out 2 beers and sat down at the table at the same time as me. We each had a plate and a knife. We made a sandwich and started eating. The whole time, Julie looked at me with a worried expression on her face. So you put Anne out on the street? She asked softly. No, I didn't. I just made it clear that she could stay, but our marriage was so badly damaged that he was on life support and might not survive the night. Oh, I'm so sorry, Julie said, taking a sip of her beer. Thank you, I replied, chewing my sandwich, which was about all I could handle right now. Sorry about you and Ed, but I think. You think so? Asked Julie. Anne said you had a serious infection. No, it wasn't. Where did she hear this from? From Ed, I said, starting to get angry again. This bastard. Damn it, he'll pay for it, that's for sure. If you need a lawyer, I know a real shark, Julie said with venom in her voice. No, we have already agreed on an agreement. Julie looked at me in shock. She shook her head, trying to understand what I just said. Is it true? She asked. Is it true? She knew she was wrong. No, she wasn't. What? I asked. That's one of the reasons I came here. Ed put something in her mind to be close to her. What? I shouted. Now I regretted that I had not kicked him harder and more than once. He put something in her drink to get her in the right mood, Julie said. He told me that when I was beating the crap out of him, he tried to be intimate with her for a long time and achieved nothing. I didn't know that, I swear, otherwise I would have divorced him a long time ago. He used pure water. Son of a dog, I growled, slamming my fist on the table. I hope that stupid scoundrel comes here to talk to you. I'll shoot him for trespassing. No, just kick him again. I wouldn't want you to go to jail for killing a scoundrel like him. I am so angry now. I could barely think. I picked up my cell phone and dialed Anne. Hello, she said hesitantly on the second ring. I'm not calling to yell at you, honey, I said softly. Okay, she replied. I'm calling to tell you that Ed set you up by putting something in your drink, and you're probably still feeling the effects. If you want, come home and we can discuss our marriage again. If you want, it's up to you, I said. I heard her crying, she dropped the phone and started hitting something. Then I heard her scream, I will kill this scoundrel. Anne, I had to shout. Yes, she answered a little calmly. Come home. No, I'm going to Ed and I'll kill him, she screamed. No, you won't do that. Come home. First, we'll discuss what to do with Ed. Here, Julie is here. She wants you to come home. She will tell you how she found out and that she does not have any infection. What? I heard a scream. I was surprised Anne didn't talk to Julie about her infection, but Ed probably told her not to since no one knew. I'll go home right away. I heard the tires squeal as she braked suddenly. Then I heard the squeal again as she stepped on the gas pedal. She didn't hang up, she just drove on, cursing Ed the whole way. I was still angry that she didn't check what he was telling her, and that she didn't tell me about how he kept hitting on her. Julie just looked at me. I put the phone on speakerphone. When she heard Anne scream, she winced but nodded in agreement. We heard her turn off the highway into the driveway, both through the phone and outside. She didn't even turn off her headlights as she ran towards the house. The door swung open and she ran towards me, pulling me out of the chair. She hugged me tightly. I barely avoided her attempts to kiss me. So, she said, stepping away from me, I take it you're still mad at me. Yes, dear, yes. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I think we have a bright future, except. What else? She said, lowering her eyes to the floor. It looks like he's been hitting on you for a long time. Why have you never mentioned this to me? I asked, frowning at her. Because I dealt with this scoundrel, she said. However, you allowed him to make you a drink, then followed you around until you succumbed to the substance he put in it. That little bastard is dead, she screamed. I put my hand on her shoulder and shook my head. No, you won't touch him. We will deal with him through the police. What he did was a criminal offense. Julie gasped. Anne's head turned to look at her. What is she doing here? She came to tell me what he did and all the times he made advances on you without her knowledge. He finally confessed to her when she was knocking the wind out of him. Oh, Anne said, still looking at Julie. Besides, she left him and needs somewhere to stay until she can kick him out of the house. Then she is more than welcome if she bears witness to what he told her, even though she is still his wife. Not long yet, sister. And yes, I will testify against him, despite what the law says, Julie replied. And like I said, I know a very good lawyer. Does Ed know her too? I asked. No. Well, then you can call her. Julie nodded. To her in the morning. I covered my face with my hands. I suddenly felt exhausted. Anne, could you show Julie the guest room? Of course. Where will I sleep? She asked nervously. In our bedroom, of course, I replied. Anne burst into tears as she helped Julie down the hallway to the guest room. I sat there for a minute, then got out, turned off Anne's truck and locked it. I pulled out 2 bags in the back and carried them into the house. As I was locking the door, Anne came back, saw her bags, and fell to her knees again, crying. I walked up to her, lifted her to her feet, and hugged her tenderly. We still have a long way to go, but at least. I stopped, unable to continue. Emotions overwhelmed me. I let go of Anne and just stood there, tears streaming down my face as I looked at her beautiful face. She raised her hand and wiped away my tears with her thumb. I took her hand and led her to our bedroom. "My bags," she said, turning to go get them. "Not now. We'll pick them up in the morning," I said. "I'm very tired now and want to go to bed with my wife." "Okay," Anne answered quietly. "As I said, it doesn't end here, and we have a lot to discuss. Right?" "Yes, dear. I love you so much," she said, clinging to my hand. After all the lights were turned off and we were in bed, she snuggled up to me and whispered over and over again how much she loved me. I just closed my eyes listening to her sweet voice. Soon she fell silent, falling asleep. The next few days, maybe months, will be difficult, but we will get through this, I really hoped. After all, I loved her, and she told me she loved me. 6 months have passed. Ed is in prison. Julie returned to her house. Anne and I are still together, still trying to forget what happened. There were some difficulties, but now everything seems pretty smooth. We are even thinking about starting a family. Anne keeps telling me where she is and where she is going. She installed a tracker app on both of our phones. We can see each other's location at any time. So far, I'm happy with how she's recovered. I'm not so happy with how long it's taking me. Do I still have doubts? No, but I'm very careful with my heart. I don't check on her often, only when I have an uncontrollable feeling that she might. Well, so far so good. I really love her. I really want to have children with her while they are mine. She knows that I won't tolerate her betraying me again. She lived through what happened if she did, and she doesn't want it to happen again, she says. Now we are happy and getting along. Jim and Mary. Mary and I'm Jim, have been married for 15 years and have no children. We wanted them, but it turned out that Mary could not have children. She has congenital pathology. It was a big disappointment for both of us, but our love was strong enough that it didn't destroy our marriage. We met in the college library when we both wanted to borrow the same book for a computer science class. Mary took this course just to fill her schedule, and I was preparing for my doctorate. We stood by the shelf, both our hands on the book. She looked at me and smiled. I just kept a serious expression on my face. We ended up sitting at the table and reading that book together. I invited her to my dorm room to continue studying, and she agreed. That night we ended up in my bed, but fully dressed, just sleeping. In the morning, when we woke up, she looked at me timidly, and I smiled and winked at her. She grabbed my head and kissed me with her mouth closed, and then thanked me for not taking advantage of the situation. After that, she quickly jumped out of bed and ran to the bathroom. I also needed to use the restroom, but like a gentleman, I waited for her to come out. Since then, our relationship began to develop on the basis of love and mutual respect. We got married right after college. Mary took a job while I was finishing my PhD. When I defended her, we were finally able to buy our dream home with my signing bonus. We were happy and in love. 15 years later, Mary went to bed and I stayed to work. Having finished my business, I decided to surf the internet for a while. I enjoyed watching adult videos and regretted not getting into the industry when it was just starting out and I was younger. You could make a fortune. Looking back, you always think, oh, I wish I knew then. So I went to my favorite site and started watching new videos. I didn't have clear preferences in genres, but I loved videos with ordinary women, without plastic surgery, and preferred amateurs to professionals. While watching the video, I suddenly noticed a familiar face. I clicked on the thumbnail. It was her. Damn it, it was Mary. What the hell? She was an adult video star before our marriage and didn't tell me. How can that be? I watched the video. Her face was only shown at the very end. That's right, it was her. Moreover, I noticed her wedding ring, which means she was filming this after our wedding. What the hell? When did she manage to do this? This bitch will still answer for this. But how? We need to think things through. I clicked on the profile of the user who uploaded the video. Judging by the information, it was a man. I started studying all the videos he posted. There were quite a few of them, and not all were with Mary. I downloaded everything with her participation on my laptop. It took most of the night, but I felt it would come in handy in the future. This morning, just 2 hours after I went to bed, Mary woke me up. I waved it off. She tried to wake me up again. I wanted to turn around and punch her, but instead I wrote a letter to work saying I wouldn't come in today. Then he climbed back into bed. Mary sat down next to him. "What are you doing? You need to go to work." "Not today, I'm tired." "Oh crap," she muttered. I wondered what plans of hers I had disrupted. She lay down again, and I closed my eyes and fell asleep. Later, when she got up, she tried to do it quietly so as not to wake me. I heard her talking on the phone in the kitchen. "Jeff, it's me. Today I won't work." "No, he's home." "Shut up, you little bastard. Don't you dare talk about my husband like that anymore." "Fuck you, asshole. You think you own me? The hell with it, you bastard." Now I was wondering why she was doing this. Is she being blackmailed? Damn it, who is Jeff? This was her entire telephone conversation. If she had been talking on a landline, she would have probably hung up forcefully. Her last words made me wonder, why is she doing all this? Does Jeff hold something against her? Who the hell is Jeff? I was completely awake, but didn't want to get up. I didn't want to see her. I needed to figure out what to do next, but I decided to stay to figure out the situation. After a while, I heard her phone vibrate. "What else do you want?" she said irritably. "Okay, 1 o'clock in the afternoon." "I don't know." "Damn, I'll see what I can do." "Fuck you." I heard her throw the phone onto the table with a thud. It didn't look like she was doing it on her own accord. It seemed like she was being forced. I lay with my eyes closed, listening to every sound. She entered the bedroom. I heard the rustle of clothes. She began to undress. I wonder what she's up to. Then she left, and I heard the sound of water coming from the shower. Lying in bed, I tried to sort out my thoughts. What made her do this? Why? We had no financial problems, and I considered our sex life quite normal. She never complained, but she complained about other things all the time. She returned to the bedroom, still naked. I opened my eyes slightly and looked. She was still incredibly beautiful, and I always felt lucky to have her as my wife. But now, my love for her began to fade like a flower, turning into something dark and cold. I listened to her getting dressed, trying to do it as quietly as possible so as not to wake me. I opened my eyes slightly again. She was wearing a simple blouse and dark shorts, what she usually wore when going shopping in the summer. When she left, carefully closing the door, I was left alone with my thoughts. And these were not the most pleasant thoughts. Should I confront her with this right now? Or is it better to monitor her actions? Dozens of options were spinning in my head, and I couldn't settle on just one. But I still had to get up. I got up and went to the kitchen. She left me some coffee, so at least that's it. I sat at the table, thinking about my life while I drank coffee. Everything looked like a nightmare from which there was no way out. Then an idea came to my mind. I was a computer scientist whose job required tracking down hackers who were trying to break into corporate systems. Sorry, I can't tell you where exactly I work. I went into the office where we had two computers, hers and mine. Having turned on both, I immediately realized that I didn't know her password. But I didn't need it. I wasn't going to enter her system, just gain access to the necessary data. A couple of hours later, I looked at my watch. I learned a lot about what she did, but I never understood why. My heart sank in pain, but now I had all the information I could need. I saved everything on my computer, ready to print if needed. I was still thinking about what to do next when the phone rang. The police number appeared on the screen. "Hello," I answered. "Is this Mr. James Dugan?" asked the voice on the other end of the line. "Yes. I'm Officer Maloney of the Center City Police Department. We have serious news for you about your wife." "What's happened?" I asked sharply. "She was beaten. She's now in the emergency room at Center City Hospital. She is unconscious. You need to come as soon as possible." "I'm leaving," I shouted, hanging up the phone and rushing to the bedroom to get dressed. I got into the car and tried to control myself so as not to break the rules on the road. The hospital was only 5 miles away, but the traffic was terrible. It took a full 10 minutes to get there. I parked near the reception department and ran to the entrance. After I introduced myself, I was taken to the department where Mary was lying. She was all beaten up. Then I promised myself that whoever did this would pay for everything in full. Officer Maloney stood nearby and waited patiently for me to spend some time with my wife. He then beckoned me into the hallway to talk. She was found on the street. She was almost completely naked, only in her underwear. We don't know what happened yet. Do you know where she was going this morning? No, I don't know. I was sleeping and just got up when you called. The officer looked at me with slight suspicion. I worked until late at night from home and decided to rest in the morning. It's clear. We don't yet know who did this to your wife. If you remember anything that might help, let us know. We haven't found her car yet. Of course, officer, of course. I don't care about this at all now, I said, although I knew exactly who the culprit was. And this person will be responsible for everything. I returned to Mary's room. Officer Maloney left, leaving me alone with my wife. I took her hand. She sighed softly and her eyes opened slightly. She blinked and tried to focus her eyes. What happened? She whispered. What do you remember? I asked softly. The time for lying is over, my dear, I said. Her eyes closed for a few seconds and then opened again, and tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, so sorry. I know. Now tell me what you remember. After that call, I think you already know what I've been doing, right? I know. We'll discuss this later. I love you. Is it true? I love you very much. I love you too. Now tell me what happened. After the call, I decided to tell him that I wouldn't do this anymore, even though he had serious materials against me. He blackmailed me into doing what I did to him and others. I'm so sorry, she said, breaking into tears. Who is he? Jeffrey Westland. I nodded. Yes, that's where all the leads led, and now he'll definitely pay for it. Did you know that I guessed everything? When? She asked, wincing in pain. This morning. I found all the evidence, as I usually do at work. Oh yes, your job, she said quietly. She still didn't know what exactly I was doing. She only knew that I was searching for criminals on the internet for the company I work for. Yes, work. Tell me how. No, I don't think I can. Not this. How did he get you to do this? Well, there was one weekend when you were away. I went somewhere and woke up in his bed in the morning. I ran out of there, but I didn't remember anything about what happened that night. Everything was kind of blurry, and then he showed up at our house with a video of me sleeping with him. He said that I will now work for him, filming, or he will show the video to you. I saw this video last night. It is posted on the internet along with several of your other videos. They also involve other women who look like they don't want to be there either. Oh God, Mary whispered, closing her eyes. I stayed with her for the rest of the day. By noon, she was transferred to a regular ward. We barely spoke, but I had no intention of leaving. She was still my wife. She may have cheated on me, but someone raised a hand against her, and this person will answer for his actions. Late in the evening, I went home, promising Mary that I would come back for her the next morning, since she was left in the hospital for the night. The next morning when I woke up, I found an envelope under the door. When I picked it up, I realized that there was a disc inside. I knew exactly what it was and threw it on the table in the office without even opening it. Then I went to the hospital to pick up Mary. She still felt bad. I helped her up to the bedroom and laid her down on the bed, kissing her softly. She sighed quietly. How can you? She began. Because I love you. Now I need to do something. I'll be in the office. By the way, the bastard left me a gift last night. Oh God, Mary breathed. I haven't watched it, and I don't intend to, unless you want me to. Please don't look. Okay, I won't. I promise. We'll watch it together later. Oh my God. Just to see what he made you do and whether it can be proven that he orchestrated it. Fine. I think. Yes, she whispered. I kissed her forehead and went into the office. I sat down at my computer and hacked into this stupid bastard's personal computer at his house. I was amazed at what I found. This asshole recorded a video of himself spiking Mary's drink while she was distracted. He made faces at the camera. A person off camera could be heard telling him it was a bad idea. I recognized this voice. Nodding, I checked the videos I downloaded last night. And sure enough, in the second video I watched, he was with Mary. This bastard will pay for everything. I spent the rest of the day studying tapes of this idiot filming himself repeating these same crimes with one woman after another, then dragging them to his home to be intimate, and then blackmailing them into performing in front of him and his cronies. Then I came across footage of that bastard beating up Mary. This bastard will pay, and will pay again and again. I found the rest of the women he blackmailed because the idiot left a neat list of their names and addresses in a Word document. Smiling, I erased all the information from his computer after copying it to the server at work. Still smiling, I uploaded a video of my boss not only having sex with Mary, but also other women. This is the surprise awaiting him. I knew he would be out of town today, but on Monday I would be standing in front of his desk when these tapes started playing on his big screen on the wall. As far as this bastard is concerned, he won't know anything until the tapes start playing on a huge monitor in front of the city council building for everyone to enjoy. But first I need to blur the women's faces. The first recordings that will be shown will be those where he slips something into them. Then I heard Mary calling. I hurried to the bedroom. Sorry, but I need you to help me get to the bathroom, she said quietly. I didn't say a word, I just carefully lifted her from the bed and carried her to the toilet. She sobbed while I did this. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and took her hand. Did you resist? I asked. Yes, she sobbed again as she relieved herself. She pulled her hand out of mine to clean herself. Then I picked her up and put her back to bed. Leaning over, I kissed her forehead. She sighed, sobbing again. Do you want me to stay with you? I asked. Yes, please, she answered softly. I lay down next to her, trying not to hurt her. Closer, please. Nodding, I moved so that I could press myself against her side. You should have come to me after the first time. You couldn't understand that you were being set up. Let's talk about this later, please, she asked. Of course, dear, I answered. Soon we both fell asleep. I woke up to Mary's moans. I moved away from her, and she stopped. Apparently, I accidentally pressed her. Closing my eyes, I tried to fall asleep again. But then he carefully got out of bed, trying not to wake her. If she wasn't sleeping, she was pretending. I slowly walked into the office to continue blurring the faces on the video copies. It'll take a couple of days, and if I work all night, I'll get it done by Monday. Of course, it was still necessary to take care of Mary. She was in terrible condition. I couldn't cope alone, so I called her sister, June. She arrived immediately. She scolded me for not calling her earlier and went to her sister. I returned to the video, wondering why June didn't ask why Mary was beaten. Then crying and growling came from the bedroom. A few seconds later, June stood next to me with an angry look on her face. What are you going to do about it? She growled. Working on it right now, I said, pointing at the computer screen. She leaned closer, her breasts touching my shoulder, and she looked closely at the screen. Who is this? She asked, pointing to the woman in the video. This is another woman who was blackmailed by this bastard, I answered angrily. Don't you trust me to avenge your sister? She pressed her chest even harder against me. I trust you. Sorry. She walked away, turned, and returned to the bedroom. I was left wondering what was wrong with her breasts. June was not married. She was almost 10 years younger than her sister, and she looked no worse than Mary. In fact, she looked like a younger version of Mary. Shaking my head, I went back to editing the video. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang and June ran past the office. I stood in the doorway in case something went wrong. It turned out to be the guy with the pizza. She took the pizza to the kitchen. I sat down at the computer again. A few minutes later, she placed a plate with 2 pieces next to my keyboard. Then she leaned over, pulled my lips to hers and kissed me on the lips. "Thank you for taking care of my sister," she said and left. I shook my head to clear thoughts that shouldn't have happened, and he continued editing the video, occasionally taking a bite of pizza. It had been a long night, but I was filled with the desire to finish the job. For what they did to Mary, I was going to get revenge. I went to the bedroom and saw June lying next to Mary in the dark. Shaking my head, I went to the guest room and went to bed. I woke up from laughter coming from the kitchen. Then the smell of coffee hit my nose. I stood up, realizing that I needed to go to the bathroom first. Then I found myself at the kitchen door, looking at Mary, who was sitting in one of the chairs from the living room. She looked comfortable. "Jim, sit down. I have coffee and breakfast for you," June said. Mary turned her head, looked at me, and smiled. I smiled back, walked up to her, leaned over, and kissed her gently on the lips. She moaned when I did this. I pulled back and looked at her. "Did I hurt you?" I asked. "No, honey. Please kiss me again," Mary replied. I kissed her again. She moaned. When my stomach growled, she pushed me away, laughing. June laughed too. Even I smiled as I sat down next to Mary. June placed a plate of breakfast and a cup of coffee in front of me. I ate, then kissed Mary briefly and went back to working on the video. It was Sunday morning. I had all day to finish. With the computer part, everything was simple. I've already set up a hack into this idiot's office and a connection to the big screen in front of the city council building. The first thing I'll show you will be a video of Mary from the very beginning to the end. Not all the records, only those where he slipped something into her, then took advantage of her and beat her. The rest of the recordings will show how he slipped something into women and short fragments where he sleeps with them. I spent the rest of the day working in my office. When I finished, June came in with Mary. Mary sat down in an easy chair opposite my desk. She smiled at me. I smiled back at her. "Have you finished?" she asked. "Yes, and even faster than I thought. But I shortened the duration of each video," I replied. Mary nodded. June simply stood next to her sister with a neutral expression. "What?" I asked, looking first at one and then at the other. "Then it's time to go to bed if you're not hungry," June said. I looked at her, then at Mary. Shaking my head, I turned to the computer and logged out. Turning around, I was met with Mary's smile again. I stood up, walked over to her, and lifted her out of her chair. She was surprised, but did not resist. I carried her into the bedroom and gently laid her down on her side of the bed. Then he stripped down to his boxers and lay down next to him. And then the biggest surprise of my life awaited me. "I want you and June." "No," I almost shouted. "But I give you." "No." I got up and turned off the overhead light. Then he lay down next to Mary again, hugging her. I turned off the lamp by her bed. Her face was full of confusion. I just looked into her eyes, trying to put into my gaze all the love that I felt for her and will always feel. She still looked puzzled. "Why?" she asked. "I don't want June. I want you forever." "Oh," she said softly. "I thought you would want to take revenge on me." "No, I don't want to take revenge on you. Those whom I want to take revenge on will get theirs tomorrow. They will both pay for what they did to you and all those women. Tomorrow you will call each of them and tell them that they can tell Jeff to go to hell." "No, I want to be with you tomorrow," she said hoarsely. "I want to hit them myself." I chuckled, not at her, but at what she wanted to do. "It's good if you're able to. This idiot won't be back until 2 o'clock, but we'll deal with Jeff in the morning. I think it would be even better if you were with me at the special city council meeting that the asshole wasn't invited to. I'll tell them everything they want to know," she said with a defiant expression on her face. "Great. And we'll deal with Jeff right after the meeting. I have everything planned. I think you'll like it, and it will be even better with you. We'll discuss everything tomorrow." She nodded and then slowly began to move down the bed. When I finally realized what she was going to do, I put my hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to, and I need. No, I want you the way you are. I want to show you how much I love you. I tried to show this by letting you sleep with June, but since you don't want to, I'll be happy to do it for you, at any time. I just looked at her with love in my eyes. Will I stop her? No. Last time, my attempts to stop her were unsuccessful, and this time was no exception. I love you, Mary said. I love you too, I replied. It was 7 in the morning. Mary sat in Jeff's seat on the dais in the city council chambers. I stayed out of sight for now. We were waiting for Jeff to come to the special session of the city council, which had already taken place 5 minutes ago. Jeff entered the hall only at 5 minutes past 8. I'm late, idiot, Mary said smugly from the dais, holding the remote control in her hand, which she pointed at the screen behind her. On the screen behind the dais, as well as on the screen in front of the hall, a recording made by Mary began to play, in which Jeff drugged her with something and forced her to do terrible things to him and his friends. There was a moment in the video where he beat her. What the hell are you doing here, frivolous woman? Jeff shouted, quickening his pace until he noticed what exactly was being shown on the screen above Mary's head. I have a letter from the city council addressed to you. I want to read it out loud. Jeff froze, fascinated, looking at the screen where he saw himself. He shook his head, trying to come to his senses. Turn it off. And where did you get this from? Now he looked alarmed. Okay, now I'll get you out of there and teach you a lesson you'll never forget, Jeff said angrily. As he got closer, I came out of another doorway and quickly caught up with him. I was behind him, and he didn't even notice me. He was so focused on Mary and what was showing on the screen. When I pointed the gun, he finally paid attention. You will go to prison for so many years. I hit him. He fell silent. Maybe you should listen to what Mary, my wife, has to tell you, you bastard, I said in my normal voice. He didn't answer. Continue, Mary. Mr. Jeffrey Westland, the City Council, in special session, resolved to immediately remove Mr. Jeffrey Westland from office as a member of the Council for crimes and misdemeanors inconsistent with his office. They didn't even say thank you for your service, Mary laughed, looking at the expression on this bastard's face. And the police will be coming soon to arrest you for what you did to my wife, to the wives of the council members, and to other women in our city. You will go to jail for a very long time. And by the way, several prisoners already know that you forced their wives to sell sexual services. We advise you to be careful. Where and how did you get these videos? Asked Jeff. Well, you idiot, you chose the wrong wife. I can say that I am a professional hacker. At the company where I work, the government gives us permission to hack any computer if there is evidence of criminal activity. By the way, you know my boss. If you think he can get you out, you're wrong. He will sit next to you. But he said he would notice if someone from work hacked into my computer. Another nail in his coffin. Well, I'm the one who set up this system. That's why I knew how to get around it. You're both idiots. At that moment, the police came through the door. They looked at the screen, then at Jeff and me. Then their gaze turned to Mary, who had come down from the dais. She turned off the screen. Before you take him, Mary said, approaching Jeff. He flinched in pain even before she did anything. Mary simply spat in his face. Bastard, she said and nodded to the police. He won't have any phone calls until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I said. The sergeant nodded. He won't get any calls until tomorrow, the sergeant replied. I just walked into my boss's office unannounced. His assistant jumped up to try to stop me, but quickly gave up when 2 police officers blocked her way. I smiled, throwing open the door to the bastard's office. He was just sitting down at his desk. When he saw me, he looked puzzled because Linda, his assistant, did not have time to announce it to me. Don't worry, Walter, I'll explain everything to you, I said, walking up to his desk and taking the remote control for his big screen on the wall. I turned on the screen, and the first thing he saw was himself, with Mary. Her face was blurry, but he knew very well who it was with. And now for the payback, you piece of shit. He stood up as if he wanted to say something, but then the image changed. First, there was him convincing Jeff that this was a bad idea, then Jeff beating Mary, and finally Jeff being led away in handcuffs. So, how many laws do you think you broke in these episodes alone? I asked. He growled and sat back in his chair. "You can't do anything about it," he said. I laughed in his face. "I just came from a meeting of the board of directors. You know, the people who hired you. Well, they voted unanimously to fire you. By the way, here is the notice of your dismissal." "Well, great, but I still have my golden parachute. I guess you haven't read your contract. There is a clause about moral standards that you violated, which means you won't get paid a dime. Moreover, the council has already obtained a court order in case you decide to sue them." I placed the notice on his desk. "Mary wanted to come over to, as she put it, punch you in the face, but she's still recovering from the beating you and Westland gave her. Oh yes, one more thing. The board of directors appointed me to take your place." "Officers," I finally shouted loudly. I turned off the TV and stepped aside so two police officers could come around the table and handcuff Walter. He tried to resist, but one blow immediately calmed him down. I just smiled at him as the cops escorted him out of the office for everyone to see. The only thing I regret is that I couldn't hit that bastard. The table between us saved him. But now 23 people from different walks of life know who took advantage of their wives. Among them were police officers, prison guards, and just ordinary citizens who might encounter him in the future and want to settle scores. Mary and I are still married. It's been 10 years since they blackmailed her. Jeff Westland is released from prison today. I heard that he had a very hard time there, so much so that he had to be put in solitary confinement to save his life. It turns out that some of the prisoners were men whose wives he sexually exploited or had friends on the outside to whom they were indebted. But today was the day he was released. I was standing across the street from the prison where he was supposed to appear. He just leaned against his car. There was no one else. His wife filed for divorce, and his family abandoned him. I waited, and then I saw him come out and head towards the gate. He was looking down and didn't notice me until he was outside the gate. Seeing me, he rushed forward. I just stood there with my hands down. A single shot rang out, echoing in the deserted street. I just stood there, holding my hands in sight, when two guards ran up to us with weapons at the ready. Seeing that it was not me who shot, they lowered their weapons and began to look around. There were several tall buildings on the street, but they were hundreds of yards away. In front of the prison, there were hills covered with dense forest. If I were a gambling person, I would look for the shooter in the forest on the hill. But by the time the police arrive, he will already be gone. The same thing happened to Walter on the day of his release 5 years later. This time I wasn't there, but I saw it on the news that night. The police came and questioned me about where I was. I said I was in my office. Linda confirmed my words, as did a dozen other employees and board members. Payback is a bitch. And in 10 years, a woman can become a pretty accurate shooter if she decides to devote time to it. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.